Welcome back to American Republic. We have been talking about the World War II, the war in the Pacific taking place, and now today, hopefully, the plan is we'll be finishing the notes. This is also the last video of week 6, so please make sure that you keep these notes because the test is scheduled for next week. You need the notes to take the test. Please do not throw away these notes, or more likely, please do not turn in these notes with your packet. You kept them 1 week, you can keep them 1 week longer. So, scheduled is Friday is your review day, and then next week, Monday, when you get your next packet, that will contain the test. We're at number 4, Nimitz moves westward. We've talked about how MacArthur was able to regain the Philippines. It became clear that the Japanese did not surrender easily. Therefore, the capture of many Japanese-held islands in the Pacific was difficult and costly. Admiral Nimitz's first target was Tarawa. After bombing the island for a whole week and pounding it for hours with heavy naval guns, the U.S. expected the Japanese to surrender. But the Japanese were well fortified and they fought fiercely. American losses soared. The Japanese resisted until only 17 of more than 4,500 defenders remained alive. Question might be asked, why did the Japanese be willing to fight until the very end, until their death? Fanaticism of the Japanese soldiers. Few Japanese soldiers surrendered. They would fight to the death of the last man rather than surrender. For every Allied soldier killed in the war, 4 were captured, and the Japanese brutalized POWs. For every 120 Japanese soldiers killed, only 1 was captured. Surrender to them was dishonorable. Such fanaticism made the Pacific War extremely fierce and played a significant role in the decision to use the atomic bomb. After this battle, it became common to spend 2 months bombing an island before beginning an attack. Nimitz liberated Guam and retook the sea east of the Philippines. The battle for Iwo Jima proved to be the costliest chunk of rock and sand ever captured by the U.S. Marine Corps. Iwo Jima had been a station used by the Japanese to attack American bombers. If the U.S. could capture it, the U.S. could use it to bomb Japan directly. In the battle, more than 5,000 Marines died during its capture. The picture that you see in the background on the PowerPoint, this was the famous photograph taken at the top of Iwo Jima. Kamikazes. As the war grew more desperate for the Japanese, less experienced pilots would fill their planes with explosives and intentionally try to crash into enemy targets. They believed that the greatest honor they could give was their life for their emperor. In all, kamikaze attacks sank 30 ships, damaged 164 more, and killed thousands of sailors. The next battle was the Battle of Okinawa. This will prove to be the last obstacle to reaching the Japanese mainland. In the battle, 110,000 Japanese fighters died and about 11,000 surrendered. The Japanese leaders warned the citizens in Okinawa that Americans treated prisoners inhumanely. In fact, the Japanese encouraged, some say ordered, civilians to commit suicide rather than surrender to the Americans. The Japanese even distributed hand grenades for that purpose. Many civilians followed their advice and blew up their entire families. Thousands of others jumped from cliffs onto jagged rocks in the sea. Having taken the island, the U.S. began bombing industrial and population centers in Japan, but recognizing the death and bloodshed of Okinawa, many feared what a possible land invasion would show. Letter B, winning the peace. As U.S. forces converged on Japan, Americans realized how hard the Japanese would fight. They feared an invasion would cost 1 million lives. A better end to the world was hoped for. Number 1, the beginning of the atomic era. The Manhattan Project involved scientists who worked to create the atomic bomb. Albert Einstein, a German Jew, had fled Germany when Hitler rose to power and had warned Roosevelt that Hitler was hoping to make the bomb first. Government officials created the secret Manhattan Project to make the bomb first. Interesting to note, Germany had nearly perfected the atomic bomb before its defeat. Imagine what Hitler would have done had he gained the atomic bomb first. Because of their expense, only 3 bombs were built initially. 1 was tested in the New Mexico desert. The other 2 would be used on Japan. In April 1945, President Roosevelt died from a stroke, and his vice president, Harry S. Truman, became president. Truman learned about the secret Manhattan Project and its atomic success. He had no doubt about the need to use the new weapon. Truman met with the Allied leaders at Potsdam to discuss how to deal with Japan. And at the Potsdam Conference, Truman and the Allies warned Japan to surrender unconditionally or face total destruction. Japan refused to accept the ultimatum. On August 6th, 1945, a lone B-29 bomber named the Enola Gay, piloted by Paul Tibbets, carried a uranium bomb nicknamed Little Boy toward Japan. And on August 6, 1945, an American bomber dropped the first bomb on the city of Hiroshima. The explosion equaled to 20,000 tons of dynamite. 80,000 civilians died immediately, and more died later of radiation burns. Yet, Japan refused to surrender. On August 9th, the U.S. dropped a plutonium bomb nicknamed Fat Man on another target. This bomb was dropped on the city of Nagasaki. Questions should be asked. By the way, over 40,000 people died in this attack. This time, Japan was ready for peace. Question: should the U.S. have dropped the bombs on populated cities? That question has been debated for decades. Well, Truman's decision to drop the atomic bomb on Japan is still debated today. Was dropping the bomb necessary to end the war? Did it prevent a costly American invasion of Japan, or was the bomb simply used to show America's military superiority? Traditionally, the rationale given for dropping the bomb was that it would prevent further loss of American lives. The war in the Pacific had already been costly. To continue the island-hopping campaign, especially to initiate an invasion of the Japanese homeland, would have meant many more deaths, both American and Japanese, and a longer war. Even before the bomb was dropped, some people suggested using it in a test demonstration with U.S. and Japanese officials present. Seeing the force of the blast would have been a powerful deterrent for anyone. However, other people countered that a test situation was too risky. The bomb had never been used before. If it failed to detonate in a test, it might have had the unintended effect of bolstering Japan's confidence. Another argument in favor of using the bomb is that it forced Japan to accept unconditional surrender terms with the U.S. Many modern historians have focused on the influence of Soviet-American relations in the decision to drop the bomb. Some people argue that the main motivation for the decision was not to force Japan to surrender, but to intimidate the Soviet Union. While attending the Potsdam Conference with Churchill and Stalin, Truman learned that the atomic bomb had been successfully tested. He was described as a changed man when he next met with Stalin. He had more confidence and determination to resist Stalin's ambitions. On August 14th, Truman announced to the nation that Japan had accepted the terms of surrender. Church bells rang, whistles blew. Americans in the U.S. left their work, ran into the streets, and celebrated for joy. Troop ships halfway across the Pacific turned around and went home. World War II was over. The U.S. was at peace again. Number 2. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito sent a radio message to his people declaring the war was over. On August 21st, General MacArthur was in Tokyo and ordered the same flag that had been flying over the U.S. Capitol on December 7th, 1941, to be raised over the reopening American embassy. He said, "Let it wave in its full glory as a symbol of hope for the oppressed and as a harbinger of victory." On September 2nd, 1945, on a very testable date, I know we have a lot of testable dates this chapter, Japan signed a treaty of surrender, officially ending World War II. So what are the consequences of the war? First of all, World War II was the costliest war in history. Period. Actually, it's a colon there, but it's the costliest war in the history of the world. 35 million deaths, about 300,000 American deaths. Also, the U.S. will spend over $300 billion on this war. 300 billion, that's a B, not an M. And remember, money back then was a lot different than money today. So 300 billion would be in the trillions of dollars today. Number 3. War crimes trials. After the war, the Allies put many leaders of the Axis powers on trial for war crimes. The accusations included conspiring to commit crimes against peace, planning and waging wars of aggression, and committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. The trials of Nazi war criminals were held in Nuremberg, Germany. Hitler and other leaders had committed suicide, but others were held accountable. Of 24 individuals that were indicted, some were declared innocent, some were condemned to death, and some faced jail time. The Japanese war criminals were tried before the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. The results were similar. Some declared innocent, some condemned to death, some faced jail time. The war was over, and Americans returned to peacetime with great relief. Despite the high price that they had paid, they won the war. It then remained for them to win the peace and take their place in the post-war world. That, my students, is the end of the notes. For your homework, you need to do pages 207 and 210 in your activities book. Page 207 is a map of Europe. You'll find maps in the book that'll help you fill out the map. Notice there is coloring involved, so please make sure that you do that too. Just page 207, not 208, so just 207. And then page 210 in your activities book you need to do as well. Again, do not do page 209. You don't need to do that, but do page 210 in your activities book. It's about 20 short answer questions. Again, this is the last video for week 6. You are to review for the test. Please, 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 again, I'll say this for the last time, please keep your chapter 23 notes with you because you will need them for the test, which will be next Monday. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. Be good, do good. Bye.